I've never really been a fan of Sonic or any of his games. I've enjoyed a few in the past, like Colors and Generations, but none that really made me fall in love with the franchise. At least up until a couple months ago when I first played Sonic Adventure. I had always avoided the adventure games because of their largely negative stigma, but one day I decided to give Sonic Adventure a fair chance. To be honest, I went in expecting to really hate it, but I ended up absolutely loving it. So with that bit of backstory out of the way, let's get into the review with the plot. Sonic Adventure's most interesting aspect is in how it tells its story. Unlike previous entries in the series, Sonic Adventure's plot is fairly fleshed out and is told in a very strange way. Sonic Adventure's plot is split up into 6, technically 7, different playthroughs, each with different characters. That being said, you're not really missing much story-wise if you just play through Sonic's story. The story structure is pretty unique, but the game doesn't really do anything too spectacular with it. But enough about the structure, let's get into what actually happens in the story.
Oh yeah! This is happening!
It starts off showing Sonic hopping from rooftop to rooftop in a city when he notices a cop car speeding down the street. He follows to find a squad of cop cars huddled around a gelatinous monster, and without asking any questions, they don't hesitate to fire at it. However, their bullets are useless and they flee. Sonic steps in to defeat the monster, but after a short battle, it retreats into a sewer as Dr. Eggman tells Sonic that the monster is Chaos, the god of destruction. Chaos is currently in a weakened state and requires the power of the Chaos Emeralds to grow stronger. As the game goes on, you fight Chaos at different intervals where he is stronger due to having more Chaos Emeralds in his possession. After the short battle with Chaos, Sonic's just chilling at a pool for some reason when he notices Tails crashing his new plane, the Tornado 2, into Emerald Coast Beach, and the first real level of the game begins.
You're gonna crash! Ah!
After making his way through the beach, Sonic finds Tails and they head back to the pool. Tails explains how his new Tornado 2 plane uses the power of a Chaos Emerald to make it a more efficient vehicle, but ran into some problems while testing it out. Tails invites Sonic to his workshop in the Mystic Ruins, so Sonic takes the train, yes, Sonic takes the train, to meet up with Tails in the jungle. However, once they meet up, they're interrupted by Dr. Eggman once again, as he tells the duo he needs the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic challenges Eggman and they duke it out with Eggman sporting his new Egg Hornet machine. Sonic makes quick work of it, but after being defeated, Eggman pulls a fast one and spats a mechanical arm out of the Egg Hornet to snatch the Chaos Emerald out of Tails' hands. Eggman then summons Chaos to feed him the emerald and Chaos transforms into a bigger monster. Eggman details his plans to feed all 7 emeralds to Chaos to give him infinite power under Eggman's rule to destroy Station Square and rebuild a new city for Eggman to rule. He sets off to find another emerald for Chaos, and Sonic and Tails head off to hunt down the rest of the emeralds before Eggman gets them. The duo manage to find 2 more emeralds in the Windy Valley and Casinopolis, but as they leave Casinopolis to find some more, Eggman shows up and knocks them out with some sleeping gas. While the duo are unconscious, Eggman nabs one of the 2 emeralds they had and runs off. Sonic and Tails then head to Ice Cap where they retrieve another emerald. Afterwards, they run into Knuckles, who says he needs the emerald that Sonic has. After a laughably easy battle, the 2 collide, knocking away Sonic's 2 Chaos Emeralds. Eggman then swoops in to nab the emerald Sonic dropped, feeding them to Chaos and unleashing the beast onto Sonic and company, now with the power of 4 emeralds. After Sonic defeats Chaos once again, Eggman summons his giant flying machine called the Egg Carrier and leaves. Sonic and Tails take the Tornado 2 to chase down the Egg Carrier, but are shot down mid-flight. Sonic crash lands into the Emerald Coast Beach, while Tails is nowhere to be seen. While searching for Tails, Sonic runs into Amy, who wants Sonic to take care of Bird for her. While the 2 are walking through Station Square, Amy sees one of Eggman's robots named Zero, but before Sonic can do anything to defeat it, Amy drags Sonic to Twinkle Park. After a bit of go-kart racing, Sonic notices that Amy is gone and assumes Zero to be the culprit. While looking for Amy, he finds an ID card that allows him to get into Speed Highway. After a short trip through the Speed Highway, Sonic ends up back in Station Square outside of Casinopolis, where he notices Zero carrying Amy off to the Mystic Ruins. As Sonic confronts Zero, the sky goes dark from Eggman's Egg Carrier, blocking out the sun. Eggman teleports Zero, Amy, and her bird friend all up to the Egg Carrier, leaving Sonic behind. Sonic chases the Egg Carrier on foot through the Red Mountain and happens to meet up with Tails at the end of the mountain. Tails has just got the Tornado 2 working again and uses it to help Sonic up to the Egg Carrier. However, as they're landing the plane, Tails realizes he forgot to install landing gear in the Tornado 2 and they crash into the deck of the ship. Before Sonic and Tails can really make any headway towards finding Amy, Eggman pulls another fast one and transforms the Egg Carrier to make it harder to navigate. Sonic now has to get through the sky deck to get to Eggman, so he sets off to do just that. With some help from Tails, Sonic makes it through and confronts Eggman. Eggman grabs Amy's bird and retrieves a Chaos Emerald from it, and sends his robot henchman E-102 Gamma to finish off Sonic and the gang. After another hilariously easy battle, Amy tells Sonic to stop fighting, claiming that Gamma is her friend and that he helped her escape Eggman's prison. Sonic agrees, but the gang feels a rumble in the ship and Tails says it's losing altitude. Sonic then heads off to finish off Eggman while the others escape. In order to get where Eggman is, Sonic sneaks into the captain's room of the ship to revert the shape of the Egg Carrier back to normal. After hitting the switch, he climbs up to the top of the egg carrier to confront Eggman. However, Eggman has powered up Chaos with 6 emeralds, and he's stronger than ever. Before Sonic fights with Chaos again, he finds Big the Cat, who's looking for his friend, a small green frog named Froggy, who is currently inside of Chaos. Sonic offers to help Big retrieve Froggy and defeats Chaos again. After the fight, Knuckles shows up to meet with Sonic. Eggman then tries to escape, but Sonic chases after him and hops on board his hovercraft. Sonic crashes into the Mystic Ruins jungle and notices a temple undergoing some tremors. A red light leads Sonic into the temple, taking him to the Lost World. No, not that one. At the end of the temple, the red light leads Sonic to an ancient mural that shows Chaos in its perfect form. Sonic then enters a dreamlike state in which he has a vision of an echidna girl named Tikal in front of a burning altar surrounded by fallen Shao. Tikal says she must stop whatever's happening here, and Sonic wakes up. Shortly after, he sees Eggman flying by on his hovercraft. He chases him into the inner egg carrier and enters Final Egg, the last stage of Sonic's story. At the end of the Final Egg, Sonic finds Eggman in his new mech, the Egg Viper. He chases it up through a vertical shaft and they fight on some airborne platforms. And I know I'm still talking about the plot, but while I'm on the subject, let me just say that this boss is fucking atrocious. You have to sit through a long, boring attack pattern before you can damage it, and you get less platforms to stand on as the fight goes on. Not only that, but the last half of the fight is riddled with stupid attack patterns that are impossible to predict if you've never played the game before, and it's so easy to fall off and have to restart. On top of all that, this boss takes 7 hits to take down. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're constantly juggling, dodging long and drawn out attacks with trying not to fall off, this fight really just drags on. Anyway, after you defeat him, Eggman is seen crashing his hovercraft, and Tails meets up with Sonic to do some cool 90s stuff, and roll credits. Overall, it's a fairly decent story with a lot to offer if you're interested in it. However, if you really thought we were done, you got another thing coming, because we aren't even halfway through. There are 5 other characters to get through, each with their own plot lines and playthroughs. However, the story remains largely the same for most of the different playthroughs, so I'll only describe the differences for each character's story and try not to repeat myself 6 times. With Tails' story. You might remember that in Sonic's story, Tails was present alongside Sonic for the first half of the game, and because of that, the first half of Tails' story is largely rehashed from Sonic's, the key differences being in the end of the campaign. So we'll just fast forward to when Sonic and Tails get shot out of the sky while chasing down the egg carrier for the first time. While Sonic crashed into Emerald Coast, Tails ended up in the Mystic Ruins. When he crash lands, he has a dream about his time with his best friend Sonic, and wakes up missing him already. Tails then sets out to get his tornado working by finding a Chaos Emerald. He finds a secret passageway in the Mystic Ruins jungle and boards down the sand hill, finding Big's friend Froggy at the bottom. The red light then shows up and takes Tails to a pyramid where he meets Tikal, who's reciting a poem her grandmother taught her, trying to decipher its meaning. Tails wakes up mid-conversation to find Big rushing towards him, trying to get back Froggy. Froggy drops his Chaos Emerald and runs off, Big giving chase. Tails then uses the Chaos Emerald to power up the Tornado 2 and catches up with Sonic at Red Mountain. The rest of the story is the same as in Sonic's story up until the big fight with Gamma. After the fight, Tails takes Amy to safety, flying back down to Station Square with her in hand. He then finds a crashed Eggman lamenting his defeat, but Eggman has a backup plan. He has a missile ready to launch at Station Square, but when it lands, nothing happens. Eggman then heads to Speed Highway to get a detonator to blow the missile up on his own, and Tails races him to the detonator to try and stop him. Even after being beaten to the detonator, Eggman has one last trick up his sleeves and attacks Tails using another new machine, the Egg Walker. Tails realizes he has to confront Eggman by himself without relying on Sonic, and defeats Eggman's mech. Tails learns a valuable lesson in being strong and independent, does more radical 90s stuff with Sonic, and roll credits. Considering half of Tails' story is rehashed from Sonic's, it can feel pretty repetitive, but Tails goes through some actual character development, which I feel separates his story enough. It's pretty charming watching Tails grow and become more independent, wrapping up with a very heartwarming conclusion. On to Knuckles' story, which is probably the most complicated. This story begins with Knuckles monologuing about his life guarding the Master Emerald when Chaos appears and steals a large chunk of the Master Emerald. Chaos disappears into goop and Angel Island collapses into the Mystic Ruins due to the Master Emerald losing all of its power, and Knuckles sets off to find the shattered pieces of the Master Emerald. This premise outlines the majority of Knuckles' playthrough. Knuckles is just hunting down the pieces of the Master Emerald, but the complication lies in the details. The story goes pretty deep into Knuckles' backstory, with him being the last of his kind and there being an ancient race of echidnas. This is where Tikal comes from, and there's this whole subplot that runs throughout all 6 different playthroughs about Tikal's father trying to steal power of the Master Emerald with his army of ancient tribal echidna, and Tikal is trying to stop him. This whole subplot doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and due to it being told pretty incoherently throughout the game, it's really hard to understand despite not actually being that important. All it really does is give context to Tikal and Chaos's existence, and it kind of shoehorns itself into the game. The reason I bring this up now is because this subplot is most relevant in Knuckles' story, and rather than drone on about Knuckles going from place to place to find the pieces of the Master Emerald, I thought this would be a good opportunity to explain Tikal's subplot. Other than that, Knuckles just goes place to place finding pieces of the Master Emerald, restoring Angel Island back to the sky, and monologues once again about his life guarding the Master Emerald. Roll credits. This is kind of a last minute addition here, so sorry for the sudden change of tone, but I didn't actually talk about what I think of Knuckles' story at all, so just as a quick little post edit here, I think Knuckles' story is decent, even if it's a little complicated and a little unfocused because of how it revolves around Tikal's subplot, even though it's not totally focused on it, because Tikal's subplot is kind of scattered throughout the entire game instead of in one plot. But Knuckles' plot on its own, which I didn't really talk about too much because it's not really anything to write home about. It's okay, it works, it's fine, it's not really anything special. Knuckles does his thing with the Master Emerald and it's cool, it's good, it's a good. Yeah. With that out of the way, let's move on to Amy's story, which is, in my opinion, the weakest. Amy's story begins with Amy walking through Station Square with some groceries and fantasizing about Sonic when she sees the egg carrier darkening the entire sky. Then a little birdie with a necklace on crashes into her. Shortly after, Zero shows up to chase after the bird. Not knowing what's going on, Amy runs and hides in a burger shop and vows to protect her new bird friend. After that, she meets up with Sonic and they head to Twinkle Park. Zero chases Amy through the park and catches up with her when she ends up back in Station Square. After being abducted onto the egg carrier, Amy meets Gamma, who requests her to hand over her bird friend. After a short argument in which Amy teaches Gamma about feelings, he lets them go. Amy then tries to escape the egg carrier by playing whack-a-mole and finds her way to the hot shelter. She makes her way through with Zero once again giving chase. At the end of the hot shelter, the red light takes Amy to the pyramid. Amy finds Tikal outside of the altar, protecting her Chao friends. Chaos begins to appear, but the dream sequence is cut short. Amy wakes up in the pool room of the egg carrier and heads to the deck where she meets Sonic and Tails, but not before Eggman retrieves the Chaos Emerald from Amy's bird friend. As we saw before, Tails takes Amy to safety after the confrontation with Gamma. When she lands in Station Square, she notices that the bird's necklace is actually a pendant, featuring a picture of the bird with two other birds. Amy agrees to help the bird find its friends and heads to Mystic Ruins. She finds a bridge to the inner egg carrier and makes her way to the final egg, but Zero once again shows up to chase her. After evading Zero and making her way through Final Egg without finding any of the bird's friends, she decides to investigate the egg carrier and finds the bird's friends, but they get shot down by Zero. Amy whips out her hammer and faces off with Zero. After she defeats Zero for good, she frees her bird friends and waves goodbye. Roll credits. Amy's story is cute and charming, but it's largely disconnected from the main storyline, so it kind of fails to really make an impact. Now for Gamma's story, which, as we saw already, is mostly tied to Amy's story. It begins with Gamma's creation. He's greeted by Dr. Eggman and told exactly what he is, E-102 Gamma, a robot created to serve Eggman. He instructs Gamma to go through a training course in the final egg and destroy a Sonic doll in under a set time limit. Afterwards, Eggman makes Gamma fight his older brother, E-101 Beta. Despite the odds, Gamma wins, and Eggman allows Gamma to serve on his ship. The egg carrier lifts off, and Eggman briefs his line of E-100 series robots, including Gamma, on their mission to find Froggy, who has Chaos's tail and needs to be tracked down for Chaos to be complete. Gamma then goes to Emerald Coast in search of Froggy. After finding him, Gamma returns Froggy to Eggman, where he watches as his brothers are disposed of due to their failure to complete Eggman's task properly. Gamma is then sent to get Amy's bird friend so he can use its Chaos Emerald to power up Chaos. Gamma accidentally walks in on Beta being upgraded and just tries to forget about it as he sets out to complete the task at hand. This is where he runs into Amy at Eggman's prison. After his chat with Amy, he abandons Eggman's ship, thinking about all of his robot brothers and how Eggman mistreated them. Gamma then overwrites his Prime Directive and sets out to free his robot brothers. Long story short, he goes from place to place, freeing them by destroying them and freeing the birds that power the robots. After he rescues all of his brothers, he has a showdown with Beta to free him, but he gets too badly damaged from the fight. After freeing Beta, his robot body is destroyed, but the bird inside him escapes free with the rest of his bird friends. They fly off into the sunset together and the credits roll. Like Amy's story, Gamma's is kind of disconnected from the main plot, but it does serve to expand on the context as to why Eggman needs to go after Froggy and Amy's bird friend. With its touching ending, Gamma's story is actually one of my favorites in the game. Next, let's move on to Big the Cat's story, the last of the 6 main stories. Big is enjoying a snooze in his hut in the Mystic Ruins jungle when he's woken up by Froggy acting strangely. He suddenly has a tail and he grabs Big's Chaos Emerald and hops away. Worried about his friend, Big chases after Froggy to get him back. He first goes to Twinkle Park to fish Froggy out of the pool, but Froggy once again hops off. Big then goes to Ice Cap to retrieve his amphibian friend, but after fishing him out of the frozen waters, Froggy once again escapes. Big then finds Tails in the Mystic Ruins, who happens to have his friend. He tries to get him back, but Froggy just runs away again. Big then goes to Emerald Coast to fish out his frog friend. He retrieves him, but as he makes his way back from Emerald Coast, Gamma swoops in and nabs Froggy at the last second. Big chases Gamma to the egg carrier and finds Froggy in the hot shelter. After fishing him out of the hot shelter, Big is taken to the pyramid by the red light, with Froggy nowhere to be seen. He watches as Tikal monologues about emeralds at the altar, then wakes up back in the egg carrier with Froggy. Big then tries to escape, but Froggy is absorbed into chaos. He meets up with Sonic and then fishes out his frog friend from within chaos itself. He then takes the Tornado 2 back to his home in the Mystic Ruins jungle to live out his carefree days with his friend, and the credits roll. Honestly, this has no reason to exist. Big and Froggy could have easily been written out of this game's story. However, I really love Big's character. He's goofy and charming, and his story acts as a sort of break from the main action. Story-wise, it's not great, but it's not really that bad either. Now, once you finish all 6 of the main stories, you unlock Supersonic's story, which is the story in which all 6 plot lines come together and Supersonic faces off against Chaos. Supersonic's story begins with a shot of the Tornado 2 outside of Big's house, still with the last Chaos Emerald inside it. Angel Island is then seen once again falling back down to Earth. We then see Eggman hovering around the Mystic Ruins jungle, lamenting his defeat when he runs into Chaos. It then cuts to Knuckles, confused about Angel Island falling again. Knuckles has all the emeralds and wants to take them to Sonic, but is interrupted by Eggman, rambling on about Chaos. It then cuts to Sonic, who is relaxing by a tree in the Mystic Ruins. He's approached by Tails, who tells Sonic that Angel Island is once again fallen. They rush to see what happened and find Knuckles and Eggman knocked down. Knuckles says that Chaos took all the emeralds, and Sonic and Tails agree to go stop him, but Sonic is once more taken away by the red light. This red light is actually Tikal's spirit, guiding Sonic to learn the truth about her, Chaos, and the ancient Echidna tribe. Tikal's father instructs his army to charge the altar, but are stopped by Chaos, who is actually tied to the Master Emerald. However, Tikal is also tied to the Master Emerald, and when she realizes the meaning of her grandmother's poem, requests the Master Emerald to help her so they can defeat Chaos. Sonic then wakes up to this.
I was on a snooze cruise, I guess.
Good thing you're okay.
Tails tells Sonic that the last emerald would still be on the Tornado 2, and they go into the jungle to find it, but when they do, Chaos shows up and nabs it at the last second. With the power of all 7 Chaos Emeralds, Chaos transforms into its perfect form and wreaks havoc on Station Square, completely destroying it. They really don't hold back either. The whole city gets absolutely fucked. Sonic watches as Chaos destroys the city when Eggman shows up in his second backup egg carrier, attempting to destroy Chaos. Chaos isn't having that shit and shoots down the egg carrier. Tikal then shows up and explains that her heart, along with Chaos's, have both always been a part of the Master Emerald. Tikal says that the only way to stop Chaos's rampage is to destroy it for good, but Sonic says that it would only leave Chaos's heart to remain sealed, forever angry. Chaos releases the emeralds after having absorbed their power, and all of Sonic's friends gather them up. Tails says that Chaos only absorbed the emerald's negative energy, and their positive energy could still be used. Sonic then transforms into Supersonic and faces off against Chaos. After their final showdown, Chaos returns to normal. Supersonic neutralizes Chaos's anger, and it can now live in peace with the Chao. Tikal, Chaos, and the Chao all leave together, and everyone lives happily ever after. Well, except for the entire fucking city that is still completely destroyed, but hey, what can you do? The credits roll for one last time, and that concludes Sonic Adventure's story. Overall, it's a pretty decent story and doesn't ever really leave any questions unanswered, but damn, was all this really necessary? Because of just how much story there is in this game, the cutscenes take up about a quarter of the game, and need I remind you that this is a Sonic game we're dealing with here. Granted, it's nowhere near as complicated or as poorly written as 06's plot, but it can definitely be overbearing at times. For example, Amy's story took me 55 minutes, including all cutscenes and the credits, but only barely over 20 minutes of that is actual gameplay. That's right, the gameplay in Amy's story takes up barely more than a third of her entire story. The point I'm trying to make here is while Sonic Adventure's story is a serviceable story if you're invested in it, it can really drag the game down if you aren't. Fortunately, so long as you're playing the DX version, you can skip any cutscene in the game just by pressing start. As for the story structure itself, the way Sonic Adventure tells its story is definitely not optimal. I feel it would have been a lot easier to follow and digest if it was told linearly rather than throughout 6 different stories. That makes it really hard to keep track of everything and can overwhelm the player very easily. Despite the gripes I have with it, it's still a fine story for those interested in one, but but all the cutscenes can be skipped if you aren't, so no harm, no foul. The other main problem with the story in Sonic Adventure is its presentation. The cutscenes in this game are absolutely horrible. The lip syncing was never redone for the different regions outside of Japan, and as a result, the English version of the game looks really awkward during cutscenes. There are constant awkward pauses and camera zooms because they just dubbed over the original cutscenes with English lines instead of replacing them, and as a result, everything comes off as very weird. However, I personally find this to be kind of hilarious in a so bad it's good way. The voice acting is kind of a mixed bag. Eggman's voice actor is wonderful, but some characters like Tails and Knuckles have really weird delivery, and Big is just... I mean, he's Big the Cat, what more do I really need to say? So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the aesthetics. Before we get into visuals, I want to talk about the soundtrack because holy shit, I absolutely love Sonic Adventure's OST. Emerald Coast, Open Your Heart, Unknown for Me, Tikal's theme. This game has some of my favorite songs from the entire franchise, and in a franchise known for consistently really good music, that's really saying something. The visuals, however, are a pretty mixed bag. The models look alright, the facial animations are really bad. The FMV cutscenes look great, but there's only one in the game that lasts for more than like 6 seconds. The environments mostly look really good. I love places like Emerald Coast, Station Square, Casinopolis, and Speed Highway, but some locales stand out as kind of meh, such as Mystic Ruins, Ice Cap, and the inside of Red Mountain. The aesthetics in general are kind of mixed, but I would say that the good locales like Speed Highway and the outstanding soundtrack outweigh the negatives here. While I'm talking about visuals, I also want to bring up the fact that the version you're seeing is actually the Steam version. However, it might not exactly look like Sonic Adventure DX if you know what that looks like. The reason for that is that I'm using a mod called Better SADX that reverts the level design, lighting, and textures back to the Dreamcast original, while also keeping features such as the 60 frames per second and the skippable cutscenes from the DX version. If you do play Sonic Adventure, I highly recommend using the Steam version with this mod. It plays like a dream. It runs so smoothly and looks so much better. So with those all done, it's time to finally talk about the gameplay. Sonic Adventure's gameplay is overall really fun, but has one major flaw: repetition. If you want to see the final boss of this game, you're going to be replaying a lot of the same stages over and over again through the 6 different playthroughs you have to do. Let's go through all 6 and rate them real quick to keep things simple here. Sonic's story won't have the repetition issue due to it being the first one you play. It's also twice as long as any other story, so it has plenty of fun, action-packed content to keep you engaged throughout the whole game. If I can make a little rabbit trail here, I'd like to compare Sonic Adventure to the classics briefly. My main gripe with the classic Sonic games is that a new player can't really have that much fun with them. They're all about speed, but that speed comes from 2 different places: automated loop-de-loops that'll throw an inexperienced player into a wall or sometimes an enemy, and memorization of the level layouts. If you don't have the levels memorized, you'll be hard-pressed to go fast for more than a couple seconds at any time. If we compare that to Sonic Adventure, the 3D space allows you to see exactly what's ahead of you at all times, gives you plenty of time to react to the level design and enemy placement, and at the same time doesn't suffer from speed constantly being automated, while still letting you go fast. This makes the game a lot more fun for new players because you don't have to memorize levels to get the most out of the game. Anyway, Sonic's campaign is pretty long, and with a couple exceptions like Lost World and the Sky Chase sub-games, is fun the whole way through. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate Sonic's story an 8. The constant meddling around in the hub world can be annoying, but Tikal's spirit will always clue you in on what you need to do if you're lost, so I don't really find that to be an issue. Personally, I really enjoy the hub world. Having this big open area where I can just run around and practice movement and get used to the controls is really nice. However, the forced sort of side quests can be a little annoying, like I said earlier. Anyway, on to Tails' gameplay. Tails' story is very similar to Sonic's. The first 4 levels are just repeats of 4 levels from Sonic's story where you race Sonic to the end of the level. Other than that, you get 1 stage and 3 sub-games, the same 2 Sky Chase sub-games from Sonic's story along with the Sand Hill sub-game, which is actually pretty fun. You won't really be doing anything new in Tails' story aside from his final boss, so the repetition can really set in here. However, Tails controls really well, and his fight ability allows for some interesting shortcuts that Sonic wouldn't be able to do, which keeps the repetition from getting too grating. I would give Tails' story a 7. It would be a lot better if there were more than 5 levels, since Tails is really fun to play as, and the 5 levels you do get are all rehashed from Sonic's story. Knuckles' story is very focused around treasure hunting, and the popular opinion on his story seems to be pretty mixed. Personally, I really enjoy it, but it does have some flaws. I've heard other reviewers complain that Knuckles stages in SA1 are shallow due to them not being designed around his ability, but I disagree. Aside from Casinopolis, every one of Knuckles' stages takes place in an existing stage, yes, but in an area that you don't really go to with other characters. So they're more like new parts of areas you already know. For example, the first stage takes place in the last area of Speed Highway, but all the action is on the rooftops and in between buildings, whereas Sonic just ran through the street of this area. Red Mountain takes place in an area that, in my opinion, seems quite similar to Pumpkin Hill, but less organized. This area of the level isn't somewhere you really explore with Sonic since a lot of the platforming in Knuckles' story is vertical. Casinopolis does give you access to an area you couldn't get to with Sonic, but it doesn't really add enough to stand out and is my least favorite stage in Knuckles' story. My biggest problem with Knuckles' story is that it's far too easy. While I do disagree that the levels weren't designed around him for the most part, I do agree that they are pretty shallow. Each level can be beaten around a minute and a half, and if you somehow struggle with finding an emerald, Tikal's spirit will just take you straight to it. I get that this was done to make it easier for new players to not get lost in these non-linear stages, but I feel like it could have been executed a lot better. Bigger stages, a better system to help new players like the hints from Sonic Adventure 2, and some small tweaks to Knuckles' control could have made Knuckles' story so much better. Despite those gripes, I did still enjoy it, so I would give it a 6. Amy's story is quite flawed and among the weakest parts of Sonic Adventure as a whole. The level design isn't bad in her story at all, but Amy takes way too long to accelerate to full speed, and as a result, the gameplay in Amy's story is slow and tedious. Gameplay-wise, her story is very short, so on one hand it's pretty light on content, but on the other hand it doesn't really overstay its welcome, so long as you skip the cutscenes. The ridiculous amount of cutscenes in Amy's story makes it really drag out. I'd give Amy's story a 4. Zero serves no purpose, he's not really a threat at all and could be removed from the game completely. There's only 20 minutes of gameplay in her entire story, and her control is wonky and hard to get used to. Not to say those elements couldn't have been fixed, but as it is, Amy's story is the worst part of Sonic Adventure. Gamma's story is by far my favorite story in the entire game. Gamma's gameplay remains fun and fast-paced while also taking a unique spin on the formula so levels don't feel repetitive. Gamma's gameplay revolves around shooting a bunch of stuff. The more stuff you shoot in one shot, the more time is added to the timer. In Gamma's story, the timer is actually a countdown timer, and you have to make it to the end of the stage before time runs out by shooting enemies and adding time to your clock. Gamma's plot is the most interesting in the game, and his gameplay is the most unique without being slow or uninspired, and his controls are smooth. My only complaint with Gamma's story is that the latter half gets a bit repetitive, with having the same boss fight 3 times at the end of 3 different stages. It also felt really short the first time I played it, but the second playthrough didn't really give me that feeling much at all. Still, I can't help but wish there was just one more stage in Gamma's story. Gamma's story gets a 9 from me. Finally, onto Big's story. Big's is the most polarizing story in the game, as instead of going from point A to point B in a level, Big's goal in each stage is to fish his friend Froggy out of the water. It only lasts 4 stages, making it the shortest story in the game, but depending on how lucky or unlucky you get, it can drag on longer than it really should. A lot of people complain about Big's story in Sonic Adventure, and I totally understand why, but personally, I'm not too bothered by it. The fishing itself is finicky, and can be really frustrating when you think you got Froggy, but the game randomly decides, nope, fuck you, and makes you restart the stage for seemingly no reason. It's nowhere near the unplayable atrocity that many people make it out to be, but it's not really that fun. Even Amy's story managed to still be fun in places, whereas when Big's story isn't frustrating you with the mechanics that don't make sense or aren't properly explained, it's just plain boring. If the mechanics were explained better and the controls made more sense, the fishing could have made for a fun minigame to distract you from the main game, but it really shouldn't have been made into its own full story. Despite these issues, Big's story only really lasts half an hour, so it doesn't really overstay its welcome too much, and Big himself is a pretty charming character, so I don't really mind it that much. Big's story gets a 5. Truthfully, it shouldn't really exist in the game at all, but it really isn't as bad as people say it is. It's just kind of mediocre. As a quick side note, I'm not going to rate Supersonic's story since it's not really a full story, rather it's just a bunch of cutscenes on the final boss fight. While the fight itself is pretty cool from a spectacle level, it's rather vapid in execution, so replaying it can feel kind of tedious. That music though, oh man, it's so good. Before I wrap up the review, I want to talk about some general gripes and praises I have concerning Sonic Adventure as a full package. Like I said earlier, the biggest problem with this game is the repetition. Throughout the 6 playthroughs you have to do to unlock the final boss, you'll be replaying the same 10 stages a lot, and if you binge the game in a handful of settings, it can really wear on you. On top of that, you have a lot of repeat boss fights. Most notably Chaos 4, which was a shit boss to begin with, but you have to fight him 3 times. Believe me, this fight in particular really gets old. In fact, most of the bosses in Sonic Adventure are fine bosses on their own, but because you end up fighting most of them multiple times, it gets really grating by the end of the game. However, most of the gameplay in Sonic Adventure is fun, fast-paced, and exhilarating. Also, Monkey Destruction Switch. I've said a lot of negative things about this game, and as I'm writing this script, I'm pretty surprised. In retrospect, Sonic Adventure has a lot of flaws, but what really makes a game good is its ability to outweigh its flaws with good qualities. The story isn't that great, but you can skip the cutscenes as long as you're playing any of the DX versions, and the visuals look pretty dated in certain locales and textures, but overall the majority of Sonic Adventure's gameplay is just pure fun, and that absolutely makes up for its other flaws. Also, as a quick side note, Sonic Adventure DX also features 2 side games, the Mission Mode and the Chao Garden. I didn't get any footage of Mission Mode, but it is pretty fun. It mostly consists of completing random objectives in the hub world with each of the characters, and it's a pretty good time. However, with the Chao Garden, I'll be honest, I didn't even bother with it. It just didn't really interest me at all. I know the Chao Garden has its fans, but at least for Sonic Adventure 1, I just wasn't interested. Overall, Sonic Adventure is a really fun game that I would absolutely recommend to any fan of platformers. Just don't be afraid to skip the cutscenes if they get a little boring. But that wraps up the review. This is easily the biggest project I've ever worked on. The script alone took me over 5 hours to make, so I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Tell me what you guys think about the video or Sonic Adventure in general in the comments. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.